We always idolized Phil Spector. He's the most famous American producer. He worked with 2 tracks, not 68, all analog. Now, and able to do that, you have to be a genius. You got to know where to place the mics. You got to be a producer. You know, a lot of people say they're producers, but they're not. You know what I mean? But he did "Be My Baby" by the Ronettes, "Walking in the Rain" by the Ronettes, "You Lost That Love and Feeling" by the Righteous Brothers. He ended up having to do "Let It Be" by the Beatles. He did George Harrison. He did John Lennon. And we always liked his wall of sound. So it was a good idea to pair up. But we knew of his ego and his maniacal attitude. He was a perfectionist. He wanted what he wanted. He was Phil Spector. I wasn't going to argue with him because it was Joey. But he didn't like the other 2 Ramones because of his work ethics, their work ethics. They used to record fast with other producers. 2 weeks, we can make a Ramones album. This took 6 months. So, you know, in Ramones' time, that's like a lifetime. But Phil Spector didn't give a shit. He wanted to do it his way, and again, he was the producer. So he had guns on him. He had a license to carry. He had 2 guns, but he never took them out in the studio and pointed them at us. He would just wear one here, one in a holster in his sock. So all the stories were just blown up into sensationalized media about, oh, you know, Phil Spector pulled out a gun out in the Ramones, this and that. That never happened. It happened another time when they met him, but I wasn't there for that. I was in the whole studio recording of End of the Century, which is our biggest selling album, due to the fact that Phil produced it and there was Curiosity 2 there. It was our highest charting album, not to mention the greatest hits and, you know, all that stuff. But he liked to drink. I liked to drink too. He was my drinking partner during, after the recording, during the day. We go out at night, go down to the Sunset Strip in Hollywood, and go to the Whiskey, the Roxy, the Troubadour, all these places. And he was about 5'3". And then he'd walk into a club, people would part. They knew who was coming into the venue. So he had this aura and stigma about him that he was a lunatic nut, but along with genius comes with that, 90% of the time. So we finished the album, and when it came out, we weren't really happy with it. We weren't. We knew there were good songs on there, Rock and Roll Radio, Rock and Roll High School from the movie, Chinese Rocks, all these other things. But to me, there was too much echo, which he was very well known for, and our sound. Not enough presence with the Ramones, but too much of Phil. But now as I look back at it, that was the reason. So I appreciate listening to it more now than when it came out. It's a business, it's a band, it's a family. Families fight, businesses fight. There's egos involved. I was the new guy when I joined the group, and I really thought that I was joining a group that were friends, but there was so much animosity between Joey and Johnny because they grew up as kids. So sometimes these animosities, they fester inside you, which you really should just let go, because when you look back, it's so trivial. And Dee Dee was doing heroin. John got off of heroin before he got into the band, and Joey was a beer drinker. And I was a periodic. I would drink, but when I drank, I loved it. And I would drink, you know, a lot, and I had a good time. But I never drank before I had to play. To me, that was the most important thing. But when I got off the stage, to calm down your nerves, you have to get into the van, travel to the next show, do the interviews, etc., sound checks. I wanted something to get the edge off. You know, I never shot anything in my arm, never did the hard drugs, but I liked sampling different beers. So that's what I did. I had to go away for a while. In 1983, I was asked to leave because it was getting a little out of control. Between the fighting and Dee Dee's dope, I was the one to be told to leave. It was a unanimous decision. I'm not going to use it as an excuse. You could look for so many reasons, but you know, it was your own thing. It was my problem. I had to solve it. So I went to institutions, rehabs, this and that, the whole deal, and eventually I learned what was more important: to continue what I dreamt of doing or drinking. Obviously, it was to continue playing and you know, having fun touring and recording, etc. So it took about 3.5 years to set in and you know, get back on the path again. So the drugs and the booze do not help. They don't. You can be a functional alcoholic and drug addict, but it's what comes after, the attitudes when you're coming down and where you're going to get your next score. You know, you got to deal with the drug dealers. You got to deal, you know, is the bar open now? You know what I mean? Stuff like that, you know. So it's not worth it. It's definitely not worth it. But the future, in my opinion, is not going to be any more record stores. It's just going to be things like iTunes. You know, you have 15, 16 songs in an album. You can listen to each song for about maybe 20 seconds, and you pick the best one. You pay $1.29.99, and you get the songs you want. I found out, well, you know, over the years, that a lot of bands always have album fillers, songs that aren't too good, but they're along with the better songs. So you can exclude what you don't like. And do I like that? I like the choice, but I don't like piracy, because what it does is, for a new band or a new individual, it stifles them from being creative. They could say in their minds, well, I'm not going to do this, it's just going to get ripped off anyway, and I'm not going to be able to make a living on it. And at that point, if the CD gets ripped off, how's the band going to tour? Because no one's going to know their music at that point, because how many bootleggers are going to really get it? It's the buying public. So they could do a live show, and no one will show up. So how does the young musician, girl or guy, going to get the inspiration if they continue to see this? So it really could, and I see it, it affects the arts, it affects music, even in the film industry too. You know, so I just hope that something comes along that prevents the piracy, which I don't see in the near future. I don't use my wrist. I use my fingers. Yeah, I could show you. I could show you. Thank you. First it's the arms, then it's the hands, and then it's the fingers. A lot of jazz players play with their fingers. Of course you have to have your wrist there, but I just find it easier playing with the fingers. Of course sometimes I'll go back to the wrist and play like this, but most of the set is basically finger movement. And that's it. I have a radio show in America called the Punk Rock Blitzkrieg on Sirius XM. I get to choose what bands I have on my show that I like. So I had to keep my eyes and ears open for new punk bands, etc., and other things. I don't just listen to punk. I don't listen to one genre, because then you know, you stop yourself from being creative. I like the Gallows, a lot out of London, England. I like the Riverboat Gamblers, very good band. I like The Loved Ones. I like Anti-Flag. I like what Matt Freeman's band from Rancid does. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. You just got to look for it. I also like the Arctic Monkeys. I like them a lot. You know, they're a good band. I really like the singer. I like what they do. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. You just have to look for it. Well, Mac Groening was a Ramones fan, and he commissioned somebody to come down. We had an 8x10 photo of us. The artist took the photo, and then the cartoon was made. It was that simple. And he would watch us in the studio because we were recording an album at that time, and he'd come by and observe. So that's how he did it. And we were very grateful to be on The Simpsons. And, you know, he had, yeah, I think Aerosmith on there, a few other bands. But to be included in that was very cool. But the really cool thing was to do the song to the soundtrack of Pet Sematary, the movie. We were invited to Stephen King's house. And we went there, and the dining room was in the basement. And it looked like a Star Trek set, you know, with the phony rocks and these crazy glittering things and monster heads. And he was into that. And then he gave the book to Dee Ramone to read and write the song Pet Sematary. It took him 40 minutes. And that was the result. That was our most played song on the radio because of that movie.